Hey guys, remember to like the video and hit subscribe.
And I don't know how anyone who respects the Republic can stand up for the guy, given all of his malfeasance, all of his authoritarian ways. But really, as shown in the recent immigration practices in these cases, it's absolutely condemnable. It is deplorable. I can put in a bunch of adjectives there, but really, are you actually paying close attention to what's happening? Because it's insane, and it's corrupt, and it's authoritarian.
So you oppose the statute that gives him essentially plenary power.
Oh my God.
To do what he did, right?
Do I oppose the Alien Enemies Act, or do I oppose what statute are you referring to?
What statute do we understand him to be operating under?
He was not deported pursuant to any statute at all. This is Kilmar Garcia. If we're referencing that case, he was not deported pursuant to any law. It was a completely lawless deportation that's not premised either on the Alien Enemies Act or the Immigration Nationality Act. Completely lawless.
Well, hold on a second. This is the Garcia who already had a deportation order?
This is the...
That was stayed, though. He wasn't, right?
Garcia, who was granted withholding of removal.
Yes.
In 2019.
Right, but he was subject to a deportation order, right? Which he just disobeyed?
No, there was a granting of withholding of removal by the immigration judge in 2019, and obviously, once you grant a withholding of removal...
It's so crazy and funny to me how lawyers become laymen when it comes time to do political debate. Like, what happens there? It's so crazy to me that they'll be like, oh, well, wasn't that guy ordered for whatever? It's like, no, that he received a, I don't know the particular term is, but there was a stay on that. He didn't have to be deported. He was a withholding of the deportation or whatever. Like, well, I thought he got deported. Like, I don't understand what happens here where, it's so stupid.
Then there is no valid final order of removal which can be applied as to Kilmar Garcia. In the process of the litigation, they conceded removability in that he had no legal status, but obviously there are other methods by which you can defensively apply for relief, and he applied for withholding of removal and was granted it by the Trump administration IG. True.
By the Trump administration IG?
Yep.
My understanding is that...
Wait, now look at what he's about to do here. Wait a second. Hold on. Your understanding? I thought you just said you haven't really been following this case. Now, if I'm being generous, which I shouldn't be generous because these guys don't deserve it, maybe he's followed it a little bit enough to have like kind of a super layman's understanding, I guess, of it. But like, it's interesting that you're going to give us an understanding of the case when you said you weren't following this at all. But okay, go ahead.
That he was, let's see here. Why was he deported? He was, right, designated MS-13, denied it.
Wait, you don't believe that,
Court
do you?
nonetheless concluded that he was. Chief Justice Roberts agreed Monday to pause the deadline for the right. So how did he come to the U.S.? He wasn't illegal. He had a work permit. I mean, it seems to me, look, I think that there is a problem with making a ruling, with conducting a sort of sweep in this way. It does seem that I want to understand what you just said about the Trump IG. Who's the Trump IG?
It's this woman, Maria.
Inspector General, right?
No, so IJ, an immigration judge.
Immigration judge.
Yes.
Okay.
Her name is Coleman or something, Marie Coleman. Oh, sorry, no, that's not the IG. That's the one for the Mahmoud Khalil case. My bad. I actually don't know who the IJ was in that case, but the IGs work under the Department of Justice and the Executive Office for Immigration Review under the Attorney General, and so they're not Article 3 judges. And it was a Trump administration era granting of withholding of removal, and everyone, including the government and now the Supreme Court.
Previous administration, right?
Yes, version 1. Which is why, by the way, this whole business about MS-13 is absolute trash. And everyone who's repeating it, including the Attorney General of the United States, including the Vice President of the United States, including everyone in the administration, is a decrepit liar. I mean, we're talking about someone who, yes, I mean, there's absolutely no basis to assert that there's a reason to believe that this person is associated with MS-13. What they claim to and what they cling to is the pure hearsay statement of an individual who said that Abrego Garcia was part of the New York outfit of MS-13, even though he's never lived in New York, even though that admission or that hearsay statement was not credited by the police at the time, even though the person who recorded that statement is someone who has problems in terms of corruption himself. If you look it up, he was like paying a prostitute or something, basically, it's all garbage all the way down. And even the Fourth Circuit opinion that looked at the evidence says it's basically just that hearsay statement and the fact that he was wearing Chicago Bulls clothing that they determined that he was a member of MS-13. But it's complete garbage, and they have not tried to develop that at the district court level. And furthermore,
but they're not. Isn't the only occasion to develop that at the district court level at habeas proceeding?
No. In this, so they would have been well within their rights before the district court in this case to present facts before the record. In fact, the district court asked what facts.
But were they obligated to?
I don't know if they're obligated to show it. Whether he's a member of MS-13 or not, the deportation was illegal. It's kind of immaterial. It's just the optical point you mentioned MS-13. But the truth is, there's not a good basis to believe this guy's a member of MS-13. And if he was, right, the administration claims he's a prominent member of MS-13. What I'm meant to believe is that in 2019, the Trump administration just let out a prominent member of MS-13 in 2019. They let him get a work permit. They just let him into the country. Does that sound right to you? The Trump administration would let out an MS-13 member, didn't raise a stink about it then, didn't appeal his withholding claim. It's all bullshit, man.
The first Trump administration, I have no problem believing that at all. I mean,
really?
Trump never really obtained control over the government in any in any meaningful.
Oh boy. Is he going to say Trump never obtained control of the government in a way of saying that like Trump was incompetent, or are we going with like a deep state explainer here?
Way. So that doesn't really surprise me. But legally speaking, I mean, I have news. Can I throw something up? Because apparently there was just a ruling from Judge Sinis.
Yep.
And it goes something like this. Judge Sinis issues 2 orders in the El Salvadoran case. That, okay, that's a constitutional law issue. And then court continues to assume Garcia is held in El Salvador. Oops. My hotel reservation instead. Take it off. Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
let's get the brass tacks.
Situation.
Yeah, so let's get the brass tacks here. I mean, everyone concedes that this deportation was illegal. The 9-0, one of the 9-0 decisions of the Supreme Court is that this is an illegal, lawless deportation. Lawless.
Where does it say that in the?
Go to Supreme Court.
Show me that where it says that in the.
Okay, so this is the opinion of the court. It says on March 15th, the United States removed Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia from the United States to El Salvador. This is on the very first page. The quote: "The United States acknowledges that Abrego Garcia was subject to a withholding order forbidding his removal to El Salvador, and that the removal to El Salvador was therefore illegal." That is the unanimous court. Illegal.
Is that the same thing as lawless? Did they use the word lawless? Because that would be that's a very important. That's a very important polemical point.
I take lawless regardless of the polemical point.
They said that it was unlawful, right? They said it was.
I take lawless to be unlawful and to be illegal. I take them to be synonymous.
It's not the same thing.
You're
because they're 2 different words. Unlawful means in violation of the law. Lawless means unconstrained by any concept of legal process whatsoever.
Okay.
Basically.
To the extent that that distinction matters, to the extent that that distinction, you care about it. For me, it's a distinction in this context without much of a difference. But I'm happy to use your term and the court's term, illegal. It was an illegal deportation. It was unlawful.
So the system works. The Supreme Court says that.
Real quick, this idea of the system works is bullshit. And I hate that anybody ever tries to get away with this bullshit excuse for lawlessness. The idea that you can break the law and then have the court come out and correct you and go, oh, well, look, LOL, the system is working when you were intending to break the law. It doesn't work for a few reasons. I don't even bother getting into, but the most important reason is because sometimes you could try to break the law in a way that the court can't help afterwards, which is where we're at right now. That's happening right now, where a law has been broken and now the court's saying, hey, you got to bring this guy home. And the administration is going, oh, well, we can't do that. LOL. Now you're fucked. Right? It's not okay to just intentionally break the law and go, oh, well, the system's working because the court said, oh, no, that was wrong. Here's a slap on the wrist.
That it was an unlawful act. Evidently, it was a screw up.
That's what they claim.
And as a general rule, well, all right. I mean, until it's proved otherwise, we'll go with that. I mean, it seems. Do you have any reason to believe that the Trump administration would choose to die on the hill of a guy who apparently...
Really? We're really going to do this argument? Do you really think the Trump admin would do something so crazy? Yes. Hello? What?
Should not have been removed. Like, what? There's so many people eligible for removal. Why would you go this way?
I think this administration is trying to see what it can get away with. So, for example, in the case of Mahmoud Khalil, they're trying to deport on the basis of the this provision of the INA that makes deportable people who the Secretary of State designates as a threat to the foreign policy of the United States. And in that case, it's like pure conclusory language in their 2-page memo that Marco Rubio drafted up. And so they're really trying to stretch the limits of their authority here. And so I wouldn't put it past. I can't prove it as we sit here that they would set up a case that was as
but it's super believable
for the people who are against the Trump administration. Well, let me just finish what I'm saying. I can't prove that. All I know is that it was an illegal deportation. I think we can agree on that. Unlawful deportation.
Yeah, yes. So it was. So the Supreme Court said. So the question now is, what can the courts do? What can the court or the government do about it?
That I think is a legal question. Good.
Well, it seems like it appears that the Supreme Court is hinting to Judge Sinis that she cannot order the Trump administration to do something with respect to a person who has been deported.
Unlawfully deported.
In the United States.
Yeah, so I want us to get to that because that's kind of one of the legal issues here, and people have made a muck, including Will Chamberlain, I think, have been dishonest about the what that ruling actually says. I think actually the way you put it is maybe I wouldn't totally agree with it, but certainly better than how Will Chamberlain put it. But this is the question I want to ask first, and like what I want us to run the ground on. Isn't it condemnable? Isn't it absolutely disgraceful that they acknowledge that this individual was subject to an illegal removal? He should not have been removed. It was against the law to remove him. That, in fact, he was granted withholding under the Trump administration for in fear for his life. They've sent him to an infamous detention center where these people barely get any time out of their cells at all. They have no access to no stimulus, wide-scale reports of abuse. Isn't it absolutely a disgrace that they have not requested him to come back? Trump can bring this person back, and he has not done so. Isn't that a disgrace, sir?
Is it more of a disgrace than the other? I'm not going. You think I'm going to do a whataboutism? I'm not.
That is what
you're doing. Is it more of a disgrace than the other illegal immigrants who were sent there, but without the problem that you've described?
I would say it's more of a disgrace.
Because they've
It's
admitted
more of a
fault
disgrace.
here. They've
At
admitted
least in the case of the alleged alien enemies from Venezuela who were sent to El Salvador to rot away in the gulag. At least for those individuals, someone can make even a facial argument, oh, we didn't know that we had to provide these people with basic due process. I mean, that is a ridiculous proposition. But even, I think bad faith attorneys even, I'm not saying that you're bad faith attorneys, but bad faith attorneys can say, oh, oops, we didn't know that we had to give these people even an opportunity to file a habeas petition. In this case, there is no possible way for us to think that they thought that this was legal. They claim it was a mistake, fine. But in this case, right, you know it's illegal. You know that this person should not be there, should not be in Secret.
Right.
Isn't it a disgrace?
So we can both agree. So we can both agree. I'm not in the disgrace business, but can we not both agree? But we can both do both agree that the right thing to do would be for the White House, for the administration, to find a way to get this guy back.
Yes. I agree that we both agree on that, but to the extent that they haven't, right? But I want to, because what I want us to focus in on first is that I do want to get to the law. But if it's the case, right, the Trump administration is disclaiming any responsibility here, just as a moral, ethical matter. You know, right? You agree, right? If Trump really wanted this guy back, he could get him back.
Yes.
Can we agree on that?
Yes. Come on.
I don't really know, but it seems to me really probable.
Okay,
I mean,
that's fair. That's
he's
fair.
the president of the United States. He has a good relationship with this guy. They're buddies. He's contracting them. He's paying them money for it. If he really wanted them back, you think Trump?
Or it's just let's just say it's the United States of America and it's El Salvador. Like, we really don't even need to say more than that. We don't need to prove that he's buddy-buddy. I mean, you can go the extra mile, whatever. Like, obviously, if the U.S. wanted this person back, it would happen. You snap your fingers and do it.
Bring him back. He could bring him back.
I would just spitballing with you. I'd be really surprised if he couldn't.
So the fact that he has not exercised whatever power he has
is a
to bring him
deliberate
back,
choice.
that is disgraceful. And whether or not you want to call it disgraceful or not, you should condemn him for that.
It's
Well, I'm not going to
condemnable.
condemn him for that because just as, I mean, again, remember what I said to you in the beginning. It's ridiculous to expect someone to condemn the politician of the party that he's a member of when the alternative is people who have much more inhuman policies and much more disgraceful policies. So
Listen to what this guy's saying. I'm not going to condemn Trump for him doing stuff that you might not like, because the other side's even worse. This is a cult mentality, right? Not even willing to say that your side might have engaged in a big bad, or your side, not even willing to admit that because you think the other side is worse. That's on its face. That's like disgraceful. It's morally disgraceful.
I can agree with you that this appears to be an error and maybe even be
Also, by the way, in a more succinct way, or actually, no, he just came out and said it. But I would argue in a fairly succinct way. I feel like I proved this in my Piers debate over the firefighter guy, where Piers was like, "Don't you think you should say no to this, or don't you think that you should condemn this type of behavior?" It's like, hold on, what is Dave Rubin going to say about January 6th? He was like, "Well, that's a totally different." Like, this is exactly what they do. This is what I accuse them of doing. It is what they do, right? They have zero moral standards for their side. They have no moral standards for their side, and it's unbelievable.
and much more disgraceful policies. So I can agree with you that this appears to be an error and may even be morally questionable, but I'm not obligated to condemn my guy. Well, just as I don't expect Rachel Maddow to condemn Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. I don't expect
really
that
think
to
so?
happen.
First of all,
He doesn't expect them?
I condemned Joe Biden's corrupt pardons of his own
them to.
family. I said that it was impeachable, and I condemned him for it. I said, Joe Biden, that was an abuse of power, and your preemptive pardons of your own family were impeachable. I said that because actually I do expect people who stand on principle to call out their own side. I think that's no more, no less than we can do. I think not doing that makes someone.
But the election was over by then. The election was over by then, right?
Whether it was or wasn't, what difference does that make? The election is over now. Trump.
Because your condemnation was of no, he wasn't running for anything. So now you're just a free agent making moral judgments, which we're all entitled to do.
But there's no election now. But there's no election now.
Oh, there's the election. Well, Donald Trump is not running for re-election, but there's a political battle going on.
Oh my God!
So
he can never morally call it his side.
Battle going on, and so the question, I think, the fair question for you at this juncture is, what is the remotely moral argument to defend Trump not doing what it appears that reasonable men would say he ought to do?
Oh my God!
What possible rationale
ought
can it be for
to
that?
have no rule of law. He ought to break.
Donald Trump wants to push things as far as he possibly can get away with them, but I can back it off just a couple of clicks from there and suggest that what he may want to do is reassert that the principle that courts cannot tell the executive what to do beyond certain limits, and that limit has been crossed here. And whether or not he reaches that point, and I think he's got the Supreme Court this close to doing that for him, with the back and forth that's gone on over the last couple of days between the District Court and the Supreme Court and the Fourth Circuit basically waving at the whole thing and not being particularly effectual in either respect. But I think President Trump, and this is entirely me winging it because I have no inside contact.
Yes, you're not speaking. You're speaking as an observer.
Yeah, but my take on this is that what he's probably doing is He wants the Supreme Court to agree with him that he doesn't have to do it, and that if he does it, he'll be a gentleman. And if he doesn't do it, now there is also another argument. If he doesn't do it, even if he gets that and he doesn't do it, then I would have a hard time understanding that.
Well,
I'd have a hard time understanding
I'm happy to move on to the law and to talk about our opinions on what's going on in these cases and to actually talk about the separation of powers issues, because it sounds like you have interesting things to say about it. So I won't linger too much on this condemning point, this moral point, but I just want to really push, though, to make sure what it would take, actually, what it would take for you to condemn him. So, for example, if it turns out that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is dead, buried on the orders of Bukele, would you condemn him for that?
Only if I had reason to believe that Donald Trump was responsible for it.
So if you found out that there was an understanding, that's what it would take. It would certainly take Trump to knowingly kill an individual.
That would be lawless. That would be lawless, and I would condemn that. Absolutely,
okay.
Yes.
So wait, so he condemns it? Look at what he just did there, right? So you do condemn lawlessness, but before you said you wouldn't condemn it because that's a moral question. Like what are we doing here? Why did we just adopt that standard? So then if the Supreme Court says that this is lawless, or if the Trump administration is engaged in lawlessness, then you backpedal on what you just said and you would actually condemn it?
But when we reach a level of arbitrary and illegal deportations, and that doesn't cross your threshold, you can't say, for example, you could say something to the effect of,
I support. Arbitrary. It's not arbitrary. They clearly, someone blew it. And they may have blown it on purpose or they have blown it by accident. But this was a person who had a deportation order.
Oh my God! Back to the dumb arguments.
What stops you from saying I support Trump's agenda, I support Trump's policies, but this action is wrong, and Trump should not. Trump should be getting him back effectively. Why can't you
Nothing. I say it right now.
Okay. All right. Okay. Listen.
It was a mistake. It was wrong. It was wrong, and intention doesn't really matter that much. It's an interesting question, and it might matter if in theory he had a Section 1983 claim, or if there were some legal recourse, intention might matter. But for purposes of what should be done, doesn't really matter. Supreme Court agrees, and everyone familiar with the facts seems to agree. It shouldn't have happened.
Would you tweet at him saying,
and
hey,
when it should,
what?
Everyone familiar with the facts seems to agree. It shouldn't happen.
Everyone familiar with the facts.
Would you tweet at him saying, hey,
when it
Mr. Trump,
happen,
I'm a big supporter. Bring him back, sir. Sir, could you bring him back? Would you tweet out? I'm not saying that you should do it right now, but is that something you'd be willing to do? For example, I tweeted out at Joe Biden when there are things that I disagree with Joe Biden on. Would you be willing to say something like, if you were to have a conversation with him, or if you were to speak publicly on the matter, would you say, Mr. Trump, I agree with you in your policy. This is wrong, and I think that you shouldn't do it, and I think you should bring it back. You wouldn't be willing to do that.
No, I wouldn't. No.
This is a cult. He's describing a cult. Understand what this guy's saying, right? No, I would never criticize. No, I would never criticize Trump publicly. No, I would never say that. Ever. No, ever. Never, ever, ever. Right? But look at how much hand-wringing they do on the Democrat side. I can't believe the Democrats won't say this or won't call out the... Think about... It's so funny, right? What is the largest, most unifying criticism that the Republicans have made towards the Democrats? That all of you guys came together to hide the mental deficiencies of Joe Biden. All of you came together to do it. And here he is outwardly saying, I would do the exact same thing. And it also, by the way, it proves my point when I said before, Biden stepping down showed that Democrats are willing to criticize their own and are willing to unify even against their own president in a way that Republicans never would. And I think I'm right on that. And I think that conversations like this, vindicate that point. He would never, ever, ever publicly call for Trump to step down or publicly call for Trump to even reverse course on an action, let alone step down.
Policy, this is wrong. And I think that you shouldn't do it. And I think you should bring it back. You wouldn't be willing to do that.
No, I wouldn't. No.
Because it would jeopardize politically your side. Is that fair?
It would jeopardize my side. Politically. That's right. It's a war, and I'm on the side of the war.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to...
It's a war. It's a war. We're in war right now. That's how they treat it. It's warfare between which political side is elected to office, right? And again, also, I love that he illustrates this. I love that he's saying all this. It's so true, right? Remember the differences that I said before between the left influencers and the right influencers? What do people on the Republican side say? I don't give a what Trump does. I'm always supporting him. We're at war with the Democrats. What did the leftists online, your Hassan Piker, say? I'm not going to choose the lesser of two evils. I'm not going to make a choice between those two. I'm just not going to vote at all, right? And on the right, I don't give a what Trump does. What would I do if Trump raped my mom? I'd beg him to only do it once, and then I'd still vote for him. That's what I would do, because I sure as hell am not going to let DEI happen. It's like, Jesus, bro.
It's a war, and I'm on the side of the war.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to... I'll let you speak. Sorry.
No, I actually don't think I had any particularly well lined up words to say.
Okay. I think it's a very interesting question because I understand where the administration lies in terms of there must be some things that are beyond the power of the district courts and about the federal courts. I think that what we have to find out is where are those limits and what exactly are they? Where are they and what are they? So, for example, I think it would be absurd to suggest that the district court could order the president to do a SEAL Team 6 raid to bring Mr. Abrego Garcia back. And if you were to take, for example, effectuate to its logical, most absurd, like the greatest meaning, right? The most inclusive meaning of effectuate. Yeah, right. You would have to, I suppose, invade El Salvador in order to get Mr. Abrego Garcia back. It can't be the case. The district court is empowered with the power to do that. And I think, but that said, right? So I understand these fears. And another example I can bring up is, imagine that the United States was somehow responsible to have illegally placed someone in Gaza at the time that they were kidnapped or something by Hamas. I think it would also likely, be absurd to think that a district judge could order the United States to engage in negotiations with Hamas under those conditions, one way or the other, right? Hamas is a foreign, there's no effective control there. You're undermining it sucks. It is something illegal. Same thing with the Russian Federation. Imagine there's a court order from a district judge saying you have to get Brittany Griner back, and Putin's going to know about this injunction or this order, and I can see how it could very quickly get out of hand. And so I take it seriously. I take the separation of powers and the Constitution seriously. I just think it's very different from this case. This case, it appears to be a completely contractual relationship. You said right at the start of this that you acknowledge that Trump actually almost certainly has the power if he wanted to bring him home. It's not like the Brittany Griner situation. It's not like the situation where you're undermining the negotiations with Hamas. And it can't be the case that the president can just contract away the constitutions and let's say put a U.S. citizen in El Salvador and keep paying him to do that and have that be you can't touch it.
That's right. Reductio ad absurdum. If there are a number of propositions that we will not accept.
Yeah.
One of them is you can't pick someone up off the street, put them into the custody of the United States military.
Yep.
And now it's foreign policy.
Yeah.
That's asinine. That's asinine.
On that we can agree. Okay. Because otherwise they could pick up this judge, throw her to El Salvador, and then no one can do anything about it. That seems absurd. Yeah.
Right. That's right. And I've actually not been particularly comfortable with that. So the case that came up with Judge Boasberg.
Right. The Alien Enemies Act case, for those of you who are following, he's referencing the case in which they deported 200 or so people who are alleged alien enemies, members of the alleged, I should say, who they shipped off to El Salvador, and Judge Boasberg had an oral order to turn the planes around, and they were saying that's not good law, they can't force them to do that.
Not necessarily turn the planes around. Also, it could have just been bring them back, to be clear, and that was specified in the order. But
yeah, that's what you're referencing. Sorry.
Yeah.
I've had that a little troubling as well. It can't. The problem is Judge Boasberg, who I have a case pending before, but I wouldn't say anything different.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's a civil copyright case, only tangentially involving January 6th.
Really? Wait, what copyright's at issue there? One of the reporters, maybe? Reporters?
No. So one of the lawyers, Dan Hull, one of the lawyers for the defendants, entered into an agreement with an expert on juror attitudes in support of a venue motion. Which the motion was, of course, denied because
did they want to reuse the expert's report? Did they want to reuse that expert's report somewhere else?
No. The problem was that they couldn't pay for it. They thought they'd have the money for it, so they made an agreement to buy this report for $30,000, and they didn't come up with the money, and everyone was pointing fingers at the other co-defendants. So Hull ends up as the guy holding the bag, and the plaintiff, in order to add some leverage to the case, turned it into a copyright infringement case. And really, Judge Boasberg could have and should have gotten rid of the copyright claim early on. But instead...
What's the theory of infringement?
That the report is an original work, and that the public... Listen to this. That the publication of the work was filing it in the United States...
Does that count as publication?
Well, I argued, although it didn't really ever get resolved on this issue, that would not be publication.
Yeah.
Jury agreed with me.
Yeah.
We took it to a jury. Jury agreed with me, but they came up with a damages number that was something larger than $30,000, which is not supportable by the evidence.
Right.
So we have a whole bunch of post-trial motions in front of him now, and he was a little this is before he got busy with this case. Not particularly proactive as a judge. It was great fun though. In any event.
And you think he should be impeached and removed?
Could you please slow this down? 1.25. Here you go.
No, I'm against the whole impeachment approach.
I heard you guys arguing about the president unnominating judges and having taking away their salary.
If that was last Friday, I wasn't there.
Okay.
That was
the Friday before.
I do not believe that impeachment is appropriate for judges being bad judges. I think, frankly, if the Supreme Court would do its job and wake up a little bit earlier in the morning and maybe work over the summer like the rest of us, a lot of the judicial activism that conservatives complain about would have been addressed and even prevented by now. But the Supreme Court, for all the reasons that everybody ascribes to Roberts and his philosophy, is they have allowed the perfect to be the enemy of the good, such that innumerable circuit splits and bad decisions are left hanging out. The circuit courts really run this country now. In any event, no, he should not be. He should not be impeached. Although I wouldn't mind a close look at the manner in which he was assigned the case, because I will tell you from my own experience, assignment of judges to cases is not random.
Boasberg said that it just came through the docket as ordinary. Now, I don't know if he's accusing that of getting assigned in a different way or whatever, but I think Boasberg said, no, this thing just came through ordinarily through like a flow of cases, but okay.
Everyone who litigates in federal courts knows it's not random. Some judges get certain kinds of cases all the time. And that's a problem. The judicial conference needs to look at it. I don't really think Congress has any
look at the
business looking
conduct
at
of the
it.
government here, Ron. I mean, he couldn't have known in advance that the government was going to be as sneaky and underhanded as they were during the course of this matter. So, for example,
Well, that brings up the next important question,
Okay.
which is, can you do this? Let's say you have a valid, not the picking up somebody arbitrarily off the street, but you want to make a test case, or you want to conscientiously invoke the Alien Enemies Act against this gang.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's creative. I'm all for that.
It's f***ing stupid, Ron. It's not in keeping with the history.
That's ridiculous that he would
hold
grant
that point.
that.
If
Or,
your
I'm glad you didn't
employment
grant that.
of that remedy is dependent on
Oh, he's talking about another case with the same judge. Well, he was talking about his case for a second. So maybe he was only talking about his case there, I guess. Maybe not.
your timing with respect to before the judge hears it, so that you can say, "Oh, they're out of our jurisdiction now." I've got a problem with that. In other words, it shouldn't matter. It is true that Boasberg didn't have jurisdiction over them once they got up on that plane, but that should not be the way you execute policy.
Well, I guess I have.
Let's do it before the judge.
Yeah, so I'm glad you say that. It's very obviously what they were doing was to try to escape judicial review in that context. They've done it in many other instances before.
So as a policy matter, Pisco, I don't see how that's a win. I think that's a loss.